Well, alrighty, gang, welcome back once again to the Gutowski Files. I don't know why I enunciated it that way. The Gutowski Files, starring Stephen Gutowski. He is the founder and owner over at TheReload.com. That's The Reload.
This is not a paid endorsement, but Cigars Daily is a friend of Active Self-Protection, and like Active Self-Protection, they are active in the fight against human trafficking all over the world. If you like cigars, check out their excellent YouTube channel and pick up some sticks to support the work they do.
.com. If you are too lazy to type TheReload.com into your browser, you can go to the comment section here, the description, and it'll be linked right there for you right ahead of Stephen's name. Stephen, how are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Fun fact, I have a comment from our 200th episode, which was last week. And I wish I could give you the name of the person who commented, but it's an Asian characters, and I don't know what language it is or what it says, but he writes, "Congrats on 200. I've listened to every single episode, often binging several hours worth of content in a workday. It's just that good." He's not wrong. My mindset when it comes to firearms would not be the same if it weren't for you, Stephen, and all the cool guests and folks at ASP. Keep up the good work. So that's a fantastic comment. It made me really happy.
That is fantastic.
So thank you. And if you hear this person who wrote that comment, write back and tell me your name so I know who you are. At any rate, so today we're going to discuss a couple of things, stories over at TheReload.com. Two of the stories are sort of related, so I'll just give you the headline, and Stephen can kind of fill us in. One is Trump hits Harris on guns, says shooting didn't change his view on AR-15s. That's the headline of an article by Stephen Gutowski over at The Reload. And then another one, where did it go? Here we go. It's an analysis piece. Yeah. Is Trump pivoting back to gun voters? ? So I think it's interesting. I think everyone kind of wanted that question to be asked. Like, okay, so you were pro-gun, you got shot, almost got killed, frankly, by someone wielding an AR-15. That could affect some people's feelings on it. It gets personal. Like if you're a gun supporter and someone you know was shot and injured or killed, that might change your view on things a little bit because it became personal. Certainly became personal with Trump when he got shot. Stephen, what are your thoughts?
Sure. Plus, Trump has in the past expressed openness to supporting an assault weapons ban, which would include AR-15s, both before he ran for office, and then there's some reporting from when he was in office after the El Paso shooting that he considered backing an AR-15 ban. Never followed through on that publicly, of course, but. You know, he had a press conference, and we've been talking about this a bit on the show, and we've been covering it over at The Reload, that there seems to have been a strategic shift from Republicans in the Trump campaign when it comes to gun politics, in that they essentially don't want to talk about it, or they weren't talking about it, at least. They stripped the gun rights policy promises from their platform compared to the previous platform that they had put out. And Trump, then they had the actual RNC, right? The Republican National Convention, and they didn't feature any pro-gun groups. They didn't have any speakers from gun rights groups. For instance, in 2016, the last convention, they had Chris Cox, who at the time was running the National Rifle Association's lobbying arm, their political arm. He had a speaking slot at that convention. They didn't have anyone from the NRA speak at this one, or from any other gun rights group for that matter. And then Trump himself did not mention gun rights at all in his hour and a half long acceptance speech that he did. Right. So there was this kind of shift to silence on the issue. They hadn't changed positions, right? They didn't come out and say, as perhaps they did with things like abortion, that they were going to change where they were at on guns in any way. But also, they just were kind of de-emphasizing the issue altogether. And so one of the interesting things that happened since then, well, there's been a lot of interesting things that have happened since then, including the president dropping out of his re-election race and endorsing his vice president, and all that's given Democrats a lot of momentum, and the polling has improved a lot for the Democrats over that time period. But also, Trump has come out and had a press conference now. He did it late last week, and he answered a bunch of different questions. It went on for a while. And one of those questions was about, being shot, as you mentioned, with an AR-15, and whether that changed his view on whether AR-15 should be legally accessible to the American public. Mm-hmm. And he said no. He said it didn't change his view. He didn't expand beyond that on AR-15s in particular, but he did talk a lot about guns generally in that press conference. There was, in response to that question, and he went on and he accused Kamala Harris of wanting to take everyone's guns, which is a bit of an exaggeration, right? Because Kamala Harris had supported a mandatory buyback, which is a form of confiscation, obviously, but just for assault weapons, as AR-15s and such. Trump, as you know, tends to speak in exaggerations from time to time, so it's not unheard of for him to do that, just to be crystal clear on the record. And they have walked that back since then. Her campaign has, at least. But, you know, the point is that he went out and was talking about gun policy. He attacked Kamala Harris on her policy, her past positions. And then he touted his own. He said, you know, again, a bit exaggerating here, but he said that he was completely protected the Second Amendment while president. And he also went back to this point later on in the press conference. It was sort of prompted by this question to begin with, but he went back to it on his own later on in the press conference to double down on this idea that Kamala Harris is a threat to the Second Amendment and that he's there to protect it. He didn't get into any policy specifics necessarily, but he did talk about this as an issue. And so, you know, it could signal a shift in strategy back to emphasizing this as a key part of his campaign, perhaps because the polls have tightened, because one of the theories for why he'd stopped talking about guns was the idea that this campaign saw an opportunity to expand the map, to kind of appeal to some more swing voters and more moderate areas of the country. And that's why one of the reasons why they were walking back some of their past positions, opposing, you know, gay marriage or what they had previously said on abortion, things like that. And then not talking about guns was part of this, perhaps, attempt to broaden out the appeal and maybe run up the score, put other states like Virginia or Wisconsin, you know, where you're trying to appeal to these swing states, win Arizona, win Georgia back, win Virginia, maybe Pennsylvania, Michigan. And so as the polls tightened and it looked like it's going to be more of a tight race again, you know, this would be like the third or fourth one in a row where we've had a very close election. Maybe they're switching back to more of a base turnout strategy. And so part of that would be emphasizing guns to try and get gun voters more excited about going out to vote for them.
So on the other hand, and I didn't mention this article before, but contributing writer Jake Fogelman did write a member exclusive over at The Reload, an analysis piece, how Tim Walz embodies the Democrat Party's trajectory on guns. And as I understand it, he was sort of a gun rights guy until he wasn't. Can you confirm that? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's basically the trajectory. I mean, obviously the Democratic Party has always been more favorable towards gun control than the Republican Party going back decades. But there had for a long time been a contingent of Democrats from, you know, more rural areas, more rural states that were pro-gun.
Sure.
You know, and not just like in a qualified way of like pro-gun for a Democrat, but you know, legitimately pro-gun. You had a number of Democrats who were opposed to new gun restrictions of any kind for a long period, and that really lasted even up through. Started to change probably after Sandy Hook in 2012, 2013, and then I think that transformation was really cemented in 2018 after Parkland. And you can see this in Tim Walz's own journey, I guess, on guns, if you want to call it that, his transformation, his evolution on gun policy, where he started off as an A-rated, NRA A-rated congressman